The second method involves multiplying probabilities. When can you multiply probabilities? Usually you multiply probabilities when there is a compound event formed by the collection or the concurrence of two or more similar events, such as, for example, the throwing of multiple coins or multiple dice, etc. Okay? But when you multiply probabilities, it's very important to consider the order. For example, when you throw two coins, getting a head and then a tail is not considered to be the same as getting a tail and then a head. So we should mind the order in which the results can be obtained for a compound event. Let's explain this method using a long example, which we are going to explain step by step. The example is this. If I throw 5 coins, what's the probability of getting 3 heads and 2 tails? All right, so here notice that this question calls for the probability of a compound event. It's a compound event because it's made up of the throwing of 5 coins together. So we want to assess the probability of this result. So our step number 1 for this method is to find a particular case, that means a particular sequence of results that actually complies with what they're asking in the question. And for this, we use letters. So 3 heads and 2 tails can easily be represented with the 5 letters 3 H's and 2 T's, where one H stands for a head and a T for a tail. Here we have 3 heads and 2 tails, but here we have a particular order where the 3 heads appear first and then the 2 tails. But really, the problem doesn't make any reference to the specific order of the results. So the probability we need to calculate involves all the possible arrangements or orders of the 3 heads and 2 tails. But to begin with, we use any sequence. After this, we proceed to calculate the probability of that particular sequence of results. That is step 2. So in order to calculate the probability that 3 heads and 2 tails occur in that specific order, what we're doing here is multiply the probability of each of the results in that string of results. So it's actually doing this. The probability of getting a first head times the probability of getting a second head times the probability of getting a third head times the probability of getting a first tail times the probability of getting a second tail. And that would be 1/2 multiplied by itself 5 times. Why? Because the probability of getting a head or a tail is the same, right? So what does this number represent? It represents a probability of getting 3 heads and 2 tails, but in that specific order. But now, in order to assess the probability of getting 3 heads and 2 tails in any given order, not just this order, but any possible arrangements, we're going to work based on the same principle of multiplication that we used before in counting methods. Here is the thing. If I am counting the probability of different alternative results for an event, then what I should do is to add the probabilities of those different cases. But how many different cases do we have here? And what is the probability of each of the cases? We can foresee that the probability of any other case where the 3 letters H and the 2 letters T are in any order possible will be always 1/32. But what we need to know is how many of these cases exist. For that, we're going to do step 3. We are doing this. We are using the formula for the rearrangement of elements with repetitions. That is to say, we want to know in how many ways these 5 letters can be arranged. For that, we use the formula where you calculate the factorial of the total number of symbols. In this case, we have 5 letters, so 5 factorial. And we divide this by the number of repetitions that each of the repeated letters generate when they permute. So what we get here is actually 10 different arrangements, okay, for the 3 heads and the 2 tails. Since each of the arrangement has a possibility to happen that can be measured with the same number 1 over 32, to get the total probability, we just need to add 1 over 32 10 times. So adding 1 over 32 10 times, 1 for each of the possible arrangements, is the same as multiplying 10 times 1 over 32, and that is 5 over 16. That would be the total probability of getting 3 heads and 2 tails in any order. If the problem told you that we want to measure the probability of getting 3 heads first and then 2 tails, if a specific arrangement is suggested in the question, then you don't do the step number 3. Just calculate the probability of the requested sequence, and that's it, okay? You need to do the 3 steps whenever the question doesn't suggest a specific arrangement or sequence of the results.